Liverpool 2, Arsenal 2, what a fun game of football that was, and it's a game of football that throws the title race into jeopardy, but we are not here to do fun things, we are here to do some cold, hard analysis, and that's what we will do. So we've got both teams on the board here in front of me, both teams using the same sort of shape of 4-3-3 formation, but what we know is going to happen in possession for Arsenal is that they're going to invert. Zinchenko is going to go alongside Partey, you're going to have the back three remaining, switching around, you've got this 3-2 shape and then the 2 8s pushing into the forward line, and you end up with this 3-2-5 shape that a lot of elite teams use. Now with Liverpool, we don't usually see that, but the big surprise of this game was that Alexander-Arnold inverted alongside Fabinho, and the same thing happened. So we had a situational back three, and then the rest of the players pushed forward into the forward line. So we got this same 3-2-5 shape. Now the question is, why might Jurgen Klopp approach the game in this way? Well, we know that when Arsenal play against teams who like to build from the back, they like to go man for man in a high press, stop the opposition from building the ball through the thirds and getting the ball towards their own goal. And what that looks like is this. You have the striker sitting between the two centre-backs. Martinelli will go on the fullback on his side. Saka will sit in between the centre-back and the fullback on this side. And then across the pitch, what you'll see is player for player all the way across, with an extra player usually around the striker in this situation. Now this press looks different depending on what side of the field the ball is. So if the ball is on this side, we'll see Jesus come across onto Konate, Saka will come onto Van Dijk, and that obviously leaves Robertson free. Arteta doesn't want that, so what happens is that White will do a jump here. Holding on this side will come across, it's usually Saliba obviously, but Holding is playing instead of Saliba at the moment, and then what you end up with is player for player across the whole pitch. Now again, this does look quite risky, but the idea is that because the ball is in the opposition's half, it's very hard for them to actually exploit these weaknesses at the back, because they've got to move the ball all the way into these sorts of areas, and then it's going to be a contested possession with a centre-back. So why might Klopp have got Alexander-Arnold to invert? Now the general idea behind this inversion is that it upsets the marking system, obviously. So if Martinelli is tracking Alexander-Arnold and he goes inside, then you're going to have Martinelli coming inside here. And then because your back line can spread across the field like this, you can actually move the ball into the wide area to Konate, who's now in the fullback area. He has much better access into this part of the field, and this is a part of the field where Mohamed Salah is, who's one of your best attacking players. So the idea then is that you're making it much easier to progress the ball into his feet. There's a problem here, and that was that Arsenal responded to this structural movement almost immediately in the game, within the first 5 minutes. And what we saw was actually, rather than tracking Alexander-Arnold across, we saw Martinelli moving out onto Konate now, Xhaka jumping forward onto Alexander-Arnold as the centre midfielder, and then we saw Zinchenko coming onto Henderson because he's inverted anyway, and we saw Gabriel coming across onto Salah. Now again, we've got these 1v1 matchups in the back line, but again, because the structure is set up to deal with this, actually Liverpool weren't able to really cause any problems by hitting these players in the back line. And so the first half of the game then became about which team could progress the ball best out of this kind of structure, and Liverpool very much came off worst in that respect. Because two reasons, I think. The first of which is that when you set up in this way, what you're setting yourself up to do is actually build the ball through the middle. And if you're interested in this topic, we actually have a video coming out on Tifo IRL this week, which will look at that. So make sure you subscribe by pressing the button below. And the problem here is that Alexander-Arnold isn't a particularly good pivot player. He doesn't have the sort of requisite skill set that you want from your pivot player. He's not particularly press resistant. He's not very good at taking the ball on the turn. And so because of that, Liverpool weren't really able to move the ball through the centre of the field. Now that's okay, because as we've said, you don't just need to be able to build up through the middle with this system. You can actually generate space in the wide areas that you can then exploit. But there's another problem here, and that is that Mohamed Salah actually wasn't great at playing back to goal, dropping in, picking the ball up and bringing the rest of his teammates into play. And so Liverpool couldn't progress the ball down the wide areas. On the other hand, Arsenal were able to do this, and we saw this really nicely enacted in the first goal itself. So in this situation, we ended up with Ben White on the ball here, with access to the wide area, and Saka, a direct pass through to him. Now in this situation, this is where Mohamed Salah had been struggling a little bit, because in these scenarios, the opposition defender would get right behind him, he would receive the ball to feet, and it would be really hard for him to turn on the ball. The only real option he had was playing one of these long cross-field ball passes, first time just trying to find a player on the wide area. But what we saw from Bukayo Saka here is something that has become a bit of a trademark for Arsenal this season, particularly in the wide areas, and that is that Saka is going to try and get onto the ball in a much better body position than just simply holding the opposition defender off and taking the ball to feet. So what actually happens is that Saka, rather than allowing the ball to come to his feet, is he makes one of these really curving runs like this, and what this does is it pulls Robertson in, it allows Saka to come around in this direction here, and because Ben White is going to play the ball on this direction, Saka is now moving in the same direction as the ball itself. Now I've got got a couple of screenshots to illustrate this. Here's Ben White, Arsenal playing this way down the field. He's got the ball at his feet. He's going to play this pass in behind Andy Robertson, who's here, and here's Bukayo Saka on the sideline. And as we can see, he's going to make this curved run. And the important thing here is that what's going to happen is that both Bukayo Saka and the ball are going to end up on the same trajectory, which gives them just a much better dynamic in towards the opposition goal. It's going to allow them to progress the ball without having to take needless touches. So when the ball comes in, you can see Saka is just going to let it run across his body. He has a really nice angle in towards the goal, and he's able to progress the ball really well. So in the first half, Arsenal were much better at progressing the ball into those dangerous areas. They were able to pick up 2 goals, but despite the fact that Liverpool maybe weren't as good at progressing the ball, they were still dangerous in transitional moments, and they were able to get a goal just before half-time, which made it 2-1, and this changed the course of the game. How did that change the game? Well, with the goal difference reduced to 1, Arsenal got a little bit more conservative. They didn't want to give away as much, and they started sitting a little bit deeper. What impact does that have? Well, it means that Liverpool are going to be able to progress the ball a little bit easier. Now, Liverpool did try to find a few solutions to the problems they had in the first half. We saw Jordan Henderson moving out wide into wide areas so that Salah could push Gabriel back and Liverpool could actually progress the ball through Henderson rather than directly to Salah. But the majority of what was happening is that Arsenal were dropping deeper and deeper to try and protect their lead, and Liverpool were able to move the ball into these dangerous areas. And in the second half, actually, at times, we saw these situations that we often saw in the Premier League last season, which is Liverpool looking very dominant, pushing the opposition really, really deep, forcing them back, and actually playing the ball around, trying to fashion an opening. And actually, in the end, this is where the chance came from for Liverpool to draw level. Alexander-Arnold gets to the byline, he's isolated against Zinchenko, plays the ball through his legs, gets into this lovely area at the edge of the penalty box, and is able to flick the ball to the back post, and in comes not Jota, but actually Firmino, who has scored many goals against Liverpool in his time. The game was now 2-2. So what a fun game of football. Jurgen Klopp tried to do elite football, but he proved that despite the fact that you can change your structure, it doesn't matter if you don't have the players to play the right roles. But it didn't matter because in the end, they were able to run out with a draw 2-2. It throws the title race open. Everyone is excited. What is going to happen? The Premier League is great. The end.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.